It's 3 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Daniel Che. We continue our coverage of the Sewol-ho ferry search and investigation. On this, the 8th day since its sinking, 150 confirmed dead, more than 150 unaccounted for. We begin with the investigation into this tragic disaster. It is widening and speeding up. More crew members now find themselves in custody. And for more, we turn to our Laah Hyun-kyung at the news center. Hyun-kyung.
Daniel, 11 out of the 15 crew members that were on board the sunken ferry are now either detained or arrested. Among those is the captain, Captain Lee Joon-suk, who's charged with 5 offenses, including negligence of duty and violating ship crew law. Now, the ship crew law mandates the crew to secure the safety of all passengers in emergency situations. The joint investigation team, composed of prosecutors and police officers, are also looking into charging some of the crew with homicide by omission. Now, that's when inaction of the defendant results in someone's death. And as we now know, none of the 15 crew members really tried to evacuate the passengers. They all survived, and many of them have reportedly shown signs of regret, admitting to their mistakes and saying in hindsight they should have taken rescue measures.
They should have indeed. And it's not just the crew members that are in prosecutors' sights. How's the investigation on the ferry's operator, the Cheonghye-jin Marine Company, progressing so far?
Well, the Special Prosecutorial Investigative Team raided some 10 offices and homes of the practical owner of the operator, Yoo Byung-on. Earlier today, prosecutors are closely looking into whether Yoo and his 2 sons have evaded taxes or embezzled funds by making illegal foreign transaction. Yoo's 2 sons are the biggest shareholders of the ferry operator's holding company, and the Yoo family is said to own assets worth more than $230 million, excluding debt and assets kept outside of the country. The National Tax Service yesterday also launched a special probe into 4 firms that are closely working with Cheonghye-jin Marine Company. Dozens of personnel, including Yoo and the 2 sons, are currently under a travel ban imposed by the prosecution.
And Hyun-kyung, we're also getting reports that investigators are planning on running a simulation to determine the cause of the sinking.
That's right, but experts say it will take at least 6 months in order to find out the cause because the ship will have to be salvaged first. The Korea Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering says basic data, including the vessel's floor plans, speed, seating charts, will have to be gathered before they build a model ship, and all of that will only be possible after the ship is recovered from the sea. Daniel.
Thank you for that, Hyun-kyung. More truth being unveiled as time progresses. Now, another piece has been added to the puzzle of what may have caused the Sewol-ho to capsize abruptly. Local media are reporting that there may have been a problem with the steering gear of the Sewol-ho ferry at the time of the accident. Our Park Ji-won has the details.
This is a repair request form submitted by the crew of the Sewol-ho ferry to ferry operator Cheonghye-jin Marine Company about 2 weeks before the tragic accident. It says the steering gear of the now sunken ferry was sending no voltage warnings. Crew members said they had to reset the power and rely on an onboard power supply while they were waiting for power to be restored. The request form added the fundamental cause of the issue was unknown. However, the ferry operator took no action on the issue. Korean broadcaster YTN reported Wednesday that a ship repair company that had worked on the Sewol-ho ferry before said it had not repaired the steering gear of the Sewol-ho ferry any time recently, nor had it received any repair requests about the steering gear. Experts say the steering gear is key to safe sailing for a ship, that any problem in the steering gear increases the likelihood of an accident, and that ships with steering system problems should be prevented from setting sail. However, Cheonghye-jin Marine Company appears to have continued to allow the ill-fated Sewol-ho ferry to operate for more than 2 weeks, leading up to the accident last week. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Outside of the nation, experts in Japan have run a simulation to try and determine what caused the Sewol-ho to capsize. Conclusion: all signs point to the ferry's cargo, which they believe was not loaded properly. Our Sun Jung-in has more on this.
This is closed-circuit television footage of the Sewol-ho ferry on the day of her departure from Incheon Harbor. Vehicles are loaded onto the vessel one after another, 30 more automobiles than was previously declared. The last vehicle is loaded and just 3 minutes later, the ferry sets sail. Experts say that's not enough time for the crew to correctly secure the freight.
We assume the crew tied only 2 ropes instead of 4. They may have just tied things up loosely before the departure.
Japanese researchers carried out a simulation to find out what happens when freight in a vessel is not fastened up properly. They made a model 1/50th the real size of the Sewaro and raised the center of mass in consideration of the fact that the Sewaro ferry had been renovated recently. First, they ran the simulation without any cargo. Sailing at 5 kilometers per hour, the same speed as the Sewaro, when turned right, the model sharply leaned outward toward the turn due to centrifugal force, but did not capsize. Next, they added some weight to the ship to account for the mass of the freight and fastened it tightly. When given an abrupt turn, the model again tilts sharply to one side, but is able to balance back without falling. Then they tried again, this time with the same amount of weight, but without fixing it properly. At first, it seemed to be navigating smoothly, but as soon as it makes a sharp turn, it listed to one side and capsized in a matter of seconds.
When a vessel makes a sharp turn without its freight properly fastened, a heavier centrifugal force is applied, causing the vessel to list more outward. In extreme cases, the ship can capsize.
It is common for the captain or the chief mate to take at least an hour to make sure all cargo is secured tight before setting sail. Japanese experts say there was no time to do that in the Sewaro's case last week, which leads them to believe that improper fastening of the freight may have been the main cause of the accident. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
On the current state of search and rescue operations, our Hwang Sung-hee joins us live from the Pyeongmokkang Harbor, nearest port from the accident site. Sung-hee, dozens of bodies were retrieved in the search operations overnight. Unfortunately, no word of a single survivor so far.
That's right, Daniel. That's right, Daniel. We are now into the 8th day of search and rescue operations, but not a single survivor has been found since the day of the capsizing of the ferry. Now, most of the bodies recovered today have not been identified yet, but many of them are believed to be students, high school students, and still we have another 150 people missing inside the sunken ferry, and nearly 90% of them are believed to be students of Tanwon High School. Now, the families of the missing camping out here at the Pyeongmokkang Harbor are clinging onto their last shred of hope, but they are growing restless. I've seen family members who received reports confirming the death of their child passed out, and others are weeping and crying out into the open sea, telling their children to return. Temporary mortuaries will be set at this harbor, and funeral services will start running today. Daniel?
Well, we can't even begin to imagine the pain they're going through. Now, the search operations today, Sung-hee, have we seen any progress?
Well, the rescue team did succeed in entering the vessel's cafeteria yesterday afternoon, this coming more than a day after they secured a route there. This was where many had believed that many passengers were at the time of the accident, because it was breakfast time when the boat started to list. But unfortunately, no survivor, no bodies were found on the 3rd floor on the cafeteria. Now, the rescue team is planning to focus their search on the cabins located on the 3rd and 4th floors of the vessel. This is another key area that authorities expect passengers to have been when the ship capsized. More than 200 rescue boats, 34 aircraft, and some 550 rescue personnel will be taking part in today's rescue operations. This has been Hwang Sung-hee reporting from Pyeongmokkang Harbor.
Thank you for that, Sung-hee. Well, it's been a devastating and torturous week for the families of the missing, with nothing to do but wait for any news of their sons and daughters who were on board the ill-fated ferry. The families have been staying at a gymnasium near the accident site in Jindo, where our Hwang Ji-hye joins us live. Ji-hye?
Daniel, there are now noticeably fewer families here at the Jindo Gymnasium as more bodies are being discovered and identified. The families are leaving to tend to their loved ones at Paengmokang Harbor or to the hospital. As soon as families confirm that the newly discovered bodies are their children or their families, they rush out of the gymnasium looking very shaky and horrified. The atmosphere here is very heavy, with many of the families just helplessly looking at a television screen showing a list of descriptions of the newly discovered bodies. The families that are still here, however, are clinging on to hope that survivors will be found. There are notes at the entrance of the gymnasium, and one of them reads, "Come back soon, honey, so we can have dinner together." Families of the missing have not given up. Daniel?
Difficult, if not impossible, to soothe their pain. Well, trying to offer them some sort of comfort and support, volunteers from across the nation are gathering at this auditorium even as we speak. Can you tell us more about them?
Yes, while the whole country is hopefully waiting for news of more survivors, hundreds of volunteer workers have gathered here at the Jindo Gymnasium to support the families here and encourage them to stay strong.
I'm also a parent. I don't know how much these supplies can heal the sorrow of the families, but since they're sent from across the nation, I'm working day and night to distribute them to the families, hoping that they will provide comfort for them, at least a little.
I came here today to support the families here, and because there were already so many volunteer workers, I feel bad that I can't help them more.
Frustrations have boiled over yet again, with the families saying descriptions of the newly discovered bodies were not detailed enough, slowing the procedure of identifying the bodies. A Coast Guard official promised the families at the podium this morning that authorities will do their best to give precise information. Scores of bodies have not sent back home yet. This has been Hwang Ji-hye reporting live from the Jindo Gymnasium.
Jia, thank you for being out there. Moving on, the entire nation is mourning the abrupt loss of so many lives. Koreans are holding candlelight vigils, making donations on and offline, and trying to cope with this tragic incident together. In Ansan, the city affected the most by this tragedy, a memorial service is taking place to pay tribute to the young victims from Tanwon High School. We have our Kim Ji-yeon joining us live from the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, where a group memorial altar has been set up. Ji-yeon?
Daniel, I'm at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, where an altar has been set up for the public so that they can pay their respects to the fallen. More than 2,600 people have come here so far to pay their respects and say their last goodbyes. As you can see behind me, portraits of 47 Tanwon High School students and teachers are displayed. Included are the 25 students whose bodies were released to their families this morning. But this is a temporary altar, and local authorities are trying to set up a group funeral in a larger location as more bodies are expected to arrive in the days to come. A group funeral will be arranged in the Hwarang Recreation Park, where the public can say their last goodbyes starting Tuesday.
Now, temporary or permanent, I believe, Ji-yeon, setting up a memorial altar require a lot of help, and from what I hear, a lot of volunteers are chipping in.
Right. Citizens of Ansan and volunteers from all over the country have come here to lend a helping hand, so that bringing necessities and medical supplies.
To help support our community in this time of need, we have made all of our medicine and resources available to Tanwon High School, and will continue to do so until the altar is removed.
This could not have been possible without the help of so many people. It really shows that the nation is coming together in times of crisis.
Our hearts go out to all the victims and their families. Now, Jian, how about the student survivors? Are they going home soon?
Yes, Daniel. Up to 90% of the surviving students are to return home depending on their physical and mental conditions. The director of the hospital said that keeping them in the hospital could actually make them more difficult, their recovery process more difficult, but when they are released, they will receive regular counseling sessions and, if needed, medication as well. This has been Kim Jeon live, reporting live at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall.
Thank you for that, Jian. 14 teachers from Danwon High School were on the ill-fated trip to the resort island of Jeju when the Seoul ferry sank. On that Wednesday, when the ferry capsized, 3 teachers were rescued, while 11 remain unaccounted for. One of those teachers who didn't make it was more concerned about her students than herself until the very end. Chun Soo-young is her name, and our Connie Lee has her story.
In the last desperate moments before the ship was going down, a daughter texts her mother, "Mom, the ship is sinking." In shock and in confusion, the mother calls her daughter, Chun Soo-young, right away.
얼른 구명조끼 입어 이렇게 했거든요. 그랬더니 엄마, 학생들은 입었어 이렇게 얘기를 하는 거예요. 그 말은 제가 지금 생각해 보면 학생들은 입혔는데 저는 못 입었다는 얘기죠.
To her boyfriend, Soo-young texts him that there are no life vests. "I'm sorry." The boyfriend calls her immediately, but they hang up after 12 seconds on the line. Soo-young tells him that she needs to call her students' parents.
배가 기울고 있는데 애들 빨리 입히고 챙겨야 된다고 그러더니 자기 배터리 없다고 지금 학부모 연락하고 애들 챙겨야 된다고 그러더니 끊는 거예요.
Her last words to her boyfriend, "I love you and thank you." It was Soo-young's second year as a homeroom teacher at Danwon High School. And as for the school's yearly field trip, this one to Jeju Island on the Seoul ferry was her first. Her room remains untouched since the day she left for the ill-fated trip. Her bike, too, remains parked, waiting for Soo-young to return. Apparently, her grandmother is also waiting for her granddaughter to come home safely.
지금도 그 할머니는 저 딸이 살아있는 줄 아세요. 뱃속에 들어있어서 안전하다고 그러시거든요. 계속 그렇게 믿고 계세요.
But as much as there is sadness over the loss, her mother is also proud of her daughter, who put the lives of her students before her own. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
1 week has passed since the ferry sinking and no additional survivors have turned up, only bodies. The public is nonetheless showing its support, keeping hope alive, and a yellow ribbon movement in the online community is symbolizing that hope and sending out a message: we are still here, waiting. Our Paul Yi has more.
This simple image of a yellow ribbon bow has become a symbol of hope in the wake of one of Korea's deadliest maritime disasters. Its message of one small movement that can lead to big miracles has resonated with people across the nation. The Yellow Ribbon Campaign of Hope was first started by a university student club, urging people to unite in their support for those affected by the tragic accident.
It began as a logo being distributed as a KakaoTalk wallpaper, but it spread to other aspects of everyday life that we can see, like tying a yellow ribbon or a string on your backpack. Keeping them in your thoughts is also good.
The Yellow Ribbon Campaign has spread online across social networking services such as KakaoTalk, Twitter, and Facebook, with international celebrities and professional athletes also joining in to express their support for the victims. Meanwhile, the story of Park Ji-young, a 22-year-old crew member, has deeply moved the country. According to survivors, Park had refused to take a life jacket and instead kept trying to save passengers till the very end. Her body was one of the first to be recovered from the wrecked ship. An online petition has now attracted tens of thousands of signatures, calling for the government to designate her as a martyr. Once legally recognized for her sacrifice, Park's family will receive financial compensation and benefits, while her body may be buried in the National Cemetery.
Certificates issued by hospital-level medical institutions or police records to prove our actions are most important. In addition, identification documents from fire departments and other authorities are also required.
The Health Ministry says once it receives a formal application for Park, officials will promptly examine her case for review. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
We now shift our focus a little bit to a different story. U.S. President Barack Obama is set to embark on this Asia tour this Wednesday. There's been fresh speculation North Korea may attempt to make a statement while he's in the region in the form of a fourth nuclear test. Experts are doubtful, but Washington says it's prepared either way. Our Shin Se-min has more.
The U.S. says it is keeping close watch on movements in the north amid speculation that it may carry out a fourth nuclear test while U.S. President Barack Obama is visiting the region over the next week. Speaking to reporters on Air Force One, White House spokesman Jake Carney said the U.S. is monitoring movements at the North Punggye-ri nuclear test site. South Korea's defense ministry had earlier reported detecting increased activity there. The U.S. State Department echoed Carney's sentiment and urged North Korea to exercise restraint.
We continue to urge North Korea to refrain from actions that threaten regional peace and security and to comply with its international obligations and commitments.
The U.S.-based North Korea analysis site 38 North does not believe the regime will carry out a fourth nuclear test while President Obama is in the region. It said the recent activities detected in satellite imagery of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site are dissimilar to those seen in the weeks before previous detonations and do not suggest a test is imminent. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Well, the search and rescue operations for the Seoul capsizing continues, and we checked with our Michelle Park to see if the weather can be cooperative off Korea's southwestern coast. Michelle, how are the conditions today?
Well, the weather in Chindo has brightened up and the area has clear skies currently due to a high pressure front with a visibility of 11 kilometers, which is fairly looking good. Now, also today is the second day of the neap tide periods during which we can expect the sea currents to dip to their lowest levels, putting the high down to around 1 meters. Now, these conditions will last until Thursday, and until then, the search of the vessel is likely to continue for 24 hours. Now, also along with the neap tides, there are two periods today when the tides will be slowed down. One is expected very soon. Now, during this period, the tides will drop to below half a meter for an hour, giving the rescuers an easier time in the search operations. Now, the current temperature of the water in Chindo is at 11.6 degrees, with winds blowing at 6 meters per second, and the height of the wave is at 0.7 meters, which are generally calmer than yesterday. Well, that's all I have at this moment. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that brings us to the end of this newscast, but we will continue our coverage at the top of the hour. Thank you for watching.